Jerusalem prepares for Jesus to return. Something strange is happening in Jerusalem, something prophetic. For centuries, people have waited, watched, prayed. And now, the world's most sacred city is making preparations. Preparations for what, you ask? For the return of Jesus. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, and the Mount of Olives will be split in two. But why this exact spot? And what hidden force is preparing for his arrival? Could we be closer than ever to this moment? What if I told you that this is only the beginning? What's happening in Jerusalem right now is just the first piece of a much bigger prophecy unfolding before our eyes. What if I told you that right now, in Jerusalem, there are clear signs that this prophecy is unfolding? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will leave you speechless. Jerusalem is no ordinary city. It is the epicenter of biblical prophecy. But prophecy is never simple. What if this city holds a secret that no one is prepared to face? In 70 AD, the Second Temple was destroyed, just as Jesus prophesied. In 1948, Israel became a nation again after nearly 2,000 years. In 1967, Israel took control of Jerusalem in the Six-Day War. Each event, a prophetic milestone. And now, a new chapter is beginning. But could this chapter bring more destruction than redemption? Could it signal the start of something terrifying? Jerusalem is preparing. But for what? The Third Temple, a prophecy waiting to be fulfilled. But here's something most people don't realize. The moment this temple rises, an unstoppable chain of events begins. And once it starts, the world will never be the same again. Every prophecy leading up to the return of Jesus will unfold at an unstoppable pace. For thousands of years, the Jewish people have longed for one thing: the rebuilding of their sacred temple in Jerusalem. And right now, we are closer than ever to seeing that happen. But are we truly ready for what comes with it? Because when this happens, it won't just be a sign, it will be a turning point for humanity. But will it come at an unimaginable cost? What will have to be sacrificed to make it a reality? But before you think this is all good news, you need to hear what happens next. Because history shows us that great moments of prophecy often come with great destruction. The first temple was built by King Solomon, but destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC. The second temple was rebuilt, but destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. But why has God allowed this temple to remain unbuilt for over 2,000 years? Could it be that this delay was intentional? That God was holding back something even more powerful until the appointed time? Since then, the Jewish people have waited, prayed, hoped for the day the Third Temple would rise. But could their prayers be leading to something they never intended? Could they be walking straight into a prophecy they aren't ready for? He will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. Do you see it? This verse tells us that a temple must be standing before the Antichrist can take control. Which means, before the final days unfold, the Third Temple must be rebuilt. And today, the preparations are already happening. But who is funding these preparations? And why now? Inside Jerusalem, an organization called the Temple Institute has spent decades preparing for the temple's return. They have already recreated the sacred golden menorah, prepared priestly garments for temple service, restored the silver trumpets and incense altar, and even trained priests to conduct biblical sacrifices. They believe the temple is coming soon, and they're getting ready. But here's where it gets even more incredible. For the temple to function, the Bible says it must be purified with the ashes of a perfect red heifer. Numbers 19 describes it like this: "Speak to the children of Israel, that they bring you a red heifer without blemish, in which there is no defect." For 2,000 years, no perfect red heifers were sacrificed. But in 2022, something shocking happened. Could this be the single most overlooked prophecy in modern history? There was a lot of excitement around the world when 5 red heifers arrived in Israel. According to the Jerusalem Post, a Christian farmer from Texas had raised and shipped 5 unblemished red heifers, which were then delivered to the Temple Institute in Jerusalem. But here's the eerie part. Why would a Christian be involved in fulfilling an ancient Jewish prophecy? These heifers were inspected and approved by Jewish rabbis. Upon their arrival, a group of about 300 people welcomed them, with one person blowing the shofar, a horn used in Jewish ceremonies. The red heifers are now secure on a farm in Haifa. According to the Old Testament, the appearance of unblemished red heifers is a significant event. For Orthodox Jews, it is essential to build the third temple and resume the sacrificial system. They require red heifers to perform the rituals. However, some Christians believe that the biblically prescribed perfect red heifer signifies more than that. It indicates the end of the age. In the Old Testament, it was essential for people to be spiritually clean to enter the temple. The Jerusalem Post article explains that Orthodox Jews require red heifers to fulfill the purification requirements before building the third temple. Their aim is to obey the Lord's command fully and build the third temple with utmost devotion. But there's a massive problem. Up until now, everything seems to be aligning perfectly. But what if I told you this prophecy could spark an international situation? Keep watching, because what's coming next will change everything. The spot where the temple is supposed to stand is the same location where the Dome of the Rock sits today. This makes rebuilding the temple one of the most controversial and dangerous moves in world history. If construction were to begin, it could trigger global conflict unlike anything we've seen before. Could this be the very battle that sparks Armageddon? What if Jerusalem itself is sitting on something so powerful, so dangerous, that its very foundation could shake the world? You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Could this be what Jesus warned about? The stakes are rising. You've seen how prophecy is aligning, but now we're entering the most dangerous part: wars, deception, and the rise of a figure the world isn't ready for. Are we on the verge of something prophetic? But here's something chilling. Many believe the temple will not only be rebuilt, but that the Antichrist himself will enter it and declare himself as God. This moment is called the Abomination of Desolation. Daniel 9:27 speaks of it. In the middle of the 7 years, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. And on a wing of the temple, he will set up an abomination that causes desolation. This means that while the temple will be a glorious sign for many, it will also set the stage for the greatest deception in human history. Today, religious leaders, politicians, and entire nations are watching closely. The preparations for the third temple are real. The red heifers have arrived. The world is on edge. So the question is, if the third temple is coming soon, What else is about to unfold? And more importantly, are you ready for what happens next? Or are you still asleep, unaware that the clock is running out? The Bible warns that in the last days, nations will gather against Israel. But what if I told you that nations are already aligning in ways that perfectly match prophecy? And what are we seeing today? Tensions between Israel and multiple nations. This isn't random. This is exactly what the Bible predicted. On that day, I will make Jerusalem a heavy stone for all the nations. All who try to lift it will be severely injured. Jerusalem is becoming a global flashpoint. Could the battle for Jerusalem be the key event that ushers in Jesus' return? World leaders fear what will happen next, but the Bible tells us exactly what is coming. The Bible doesn't just say that Jesus will return. It tells us exactly where. Not in Rome, not in Washington, D.C., not in New York or London. The King of Kings will return right here. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will be split in two from east to west, forming a great valley. Did you catch that? When Jesus comes back, this is where he will land. And here's where it gets chilling. The Mount of Olives isn't just some random hill. It's one of the most significant locations in the entire Bible. Think about it. It was here that Jesus wept over Jerusalem's future destruction, delivered his prophecy of the end times, prayed in agony before his crucifixion, and where he ascended to heaven. And now, the Bible says this is where he will return. But wait, because something even crazier is happening beneath the surface. Did you know that right now, scientists have confirmed that the Mount of Olives sits directly on a major fault line? Meaning, a massive earthquake could split it at any moment, just like Zechariah prophesied. Coincidence? Or prophecy coming true? And this is where science and prophecy collide in a way that no one saw coming. This isn't conspiracy theory. It's science aligning with prophecy. The question is, are we getting close? Jerusalem today is filled with tourists, worshippers, and political tensions. But hidden beneath the surface, there's an expectation. Jewish scholars still debate the coming of the Messiah. Christians watch for Jesus' return. And Muslims believe that their version of the end will unfold here too. Three faiths, one city, one prophecy that will change everything. Right now, world leaders are obsessed with Jerusalem. Why? Because deep down, everyone knows something big is coming. The only question is, how soon? Picture it. One day, the same feet that walked here 2,000 years ago will touch the ground again. The same Jesus who was mocked, beaten, and crucified will return as King of Kings. And this time, he won't be coming to die. He'll be coming to reign. Revelation 19, verse 11. Then I saw heaven standing open, and there before me was a white horse, whose rider is called Faithful and True. This isn't just a symbolic story. It's real. It's coming. And the world isn't ready. When Jesus returns, no wall, no army, no government will stand in his way. He is coming. The Bible is a history book, unlike any other available in any public library. Its history starts with the Earth's creation and ends with the world's end. This is the only history book that covers such a broad range of events on planet Earth, partially because no one was present at the beginning to witness and document it, and therefore, no one can write the beginning of our world authoritatively. We are the only people in the world who know how it will all end. That is unique. The Lord did not reveal the future to his followers to satisfy their curiosity. He showed it to prepare them so that they would not be surprised when it arrived and that they would not misinterpret it. Be grateful that Jesus was so forthright in sharing the future for us. People ask, are we in the end times? However, the Bible talks of the last days, and we have been in those last days for 2,000 years. The last days, they started at Pentecost, where the first prophecy of the last days was fulfilled. Every Christian generation should live to be ready for the Lord's return. The Bible is a book full of predictions. Its pages contain 735 predictions about the future. A prediction can be found in 1/4 of the Bible's chapters. From beginning to end, it is basically a prophetic text, though some books focus more on predictions than others. 596 of the 735 predictions have indeed occurred and have literally come true according to the scripture prediction. So, 81% of all Bible prophecies have already come true, and some of those prophecies were made centuries before the case. It doesn't take much confidence to believe that the remaining 19% will happen as well. That's a very high score. The Bible has proved 100% right for every prediction that could have been fulfilled by now. Of the rest, most of them are concerned with the actual return of Jesus and what follows after that. How many of these predictions remain to come true before Jesus returns? The answer is about 20, and we're watching to see those happen first before we look for the Lord's return. Jesus told us to watch and pray. What do we watch? We cannot stand still and watch the clouds to wait for him to appear. That is not what he meant. He meant, keep an eye on what's going on in the world and see what signs I gave you to help you prepare. Signals are the signs. So, let's look at Matthew chapter 24, where the disciples asked him, what will be the signs or signals of your return? What would we do if we don't know when it's going to happen? To their inquiry, Jesus gave a direct and unambiguous answer. We can thank God that he responded in such a straightforward manner. In the book of Revelation, he gives a much more detailed and comprehensive response, but here he gives a rundown of the signs that will precede his arrival. The disciples approached Jesus secretly as he was seated on the Mount of Olives. Matthew 24, 3-36. Later, Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives. His disciples came to him privately and said, tell us, when will all this happen? What sign will signal your return and the end of the world? Jesus told them, don't let anyone mislead you, for many will come in my name claiming, I am the Messiah. They will deceive many, and you will hear of wars and threats of wars. But don't panic. Yes, these things must take place, but the end won't follow immediately. Nation will go to war against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in many parts of the world. But all this is only the first of the birth pains, with more to come. Then you will be arrested, persecuted, and killed. You will be hated all over the world because you are my followers. And many will turn away from me and betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and will deceive many people. Sin will be rampant everywhere, and the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. And the good news about the kingdom will be preached throughout the whole world, so that all nations will hear it. And then the end will come. The day is coming when you will see what Daniel the prophet spoke about, the sacrilegious object that causes desecration standing in the holy place. Reader, pay attention. Then those in Judea must flee to the hills. A person out on the deck of a roof must not go down into the house to pack. A person out in the field must not return even to get a coat. How terrible it will be for pregnant women and for nursing mothers in those days. And pray that your flight will not be in winter or on the Sabbath, for there will be greater anguish than at any time since the world began, and it will never be so great again. In fact, unless that time of calamity is shortened, not a single person will survive. But it will be shortened for the sake of God's chosen ones. Then, if anyone tells you, "Look, here is the Messiah," or "There he is," don't believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will rise up and perform great signs and wonders so as to deceive, if possible, even God's chosen ones. See, I have warned you about this ahead of time. So if someone tells you, "Look, the Messiah is out in the desert," don't bother to go and look. Or, "Look, he is hiding here," don't believe it. For as the lightning flashes in the east and shines to the west, so it will be when the Son of Man comes. Just as the gathering of vultures shows there is a carcass nearby, so these signs indicate that the end is near. Immediately after the anguish of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will give no light, the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. And then at last, the sign that the Son of Man is coming will appear in the heavens, and there will be deep mourning among all the peoples of the earth, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send out his angels with the mighty blast of a trumpet, and they will gather his chosen ones from all over the world, from the farthest ends of the earth and heaven. Now learn a lesson from the fig tree. When its branches bud and its leaves begin to sprout, you know that summer is near. In the same way, when you see all these things, you can know his return is very near, right at the door. I tell you the truth, this generation will not pass from the scene until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will disappear, but my words will never disappear. However, no one knows the day or hour when these things will happen, not even the angels in heaven or the Son himself. Only the Father knows. Now, in that passage, he gave 4 distinct signs of his coming. One of the 4 signs is already there, while the other 3 are not. That is why I say, we are in the beginning of the end times. So, what exactly are these 4 signs he gave us? The first is clearly disasters in the world, and he mentions, for example, wars, famines, and earthquakes. These are certainly happening, but they have been happening for over 2,000 years. They are getting more intense, so we certainly are in this first sign. There are already wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes, and famine. Jesus says, "Don't be deceived." He says that again and again, all the way through. As we get nearer to the end, the danger is deception, both inside and outside the church. In this case, he says, from false Christs, false messiahs, people who will take advantage of the turmoil of natural disasters to present themselves as saviors. There are well-known examples of people who pretended to be saviors and led people into desert locations, only to end in tragedy. However, there are many false Christs, false saviors who claim to be the promised deliverer from all our troubles. The more problems there are, the more false deliverers there would be. But, as Jesus advises us, don't be alarmed. Don't be worried when you learn of a new war, a new tragedy, or a new famine breaking out. He said something astonishing. These are painful events, but they are not pangs of death. They are birth pains. So when you read of disasters in the media, these are the pains that mean something new is about to be born. This should completely change our attitude. We know what the world is coming to. We should not be alarmed or dismayed, not as worried as the world will be about these things. Disasters in the world are the pain of birth in a new world that is to be born. Therefore, we are very different. We have sympathy for those who are suffering disasters, and hopefully we express it in help. But in our hearts, we are not alarmed. We are hopeful. We are looking for a new birth of a new world, and therefore, we are not dismayed or depressed by all the problems in the world. In short, Jesus' advice to us would be not to panic, not to be disturbed, but even to rejoice and say, "These are all signs of something new happening." The second sign of his coming is not in the world, but in the church. Disasters in the world are the first sign. The church, not the world, is the second sign of his coming. The first warning is disasters around the world. The second is changes in the church. Just as he divided the first sign into three parts, wars, earthquakes, and famines, he divides the second sign into three parts, all of which occur within the church. The first is persecution, that we will be hated in every nation. The second aspect of this sign would be a significant reduction in the church's size. Most people's love will grow cold. When the whole church is under strain, many nominal Christians, if not all true Christians, would leave. Under the burdens of universal persecution, their love would grow cold. That's a very depressing sign. The big surprise in the third part of the sign is that the gospel will be preached to every racial group. The third part of the sign is that the gospel will be proclaimed. A smaller, purified church would have a greater impact on the planet. That is exactly what Jesus is implying. False prophets can be a source of deceit in all of this. We are aware of the teachings of false prophets. When there is no peace, they teach peace, rather than being a source of challenge. Their message is one of comfort. It's all right. It won't happen, they'll say. All is fine. Everything is fantastic. The church is in good hands. That is a false prediction. They may be to blame for the large number of people who would leave the church at that time. Now, Jesus' advice is to keep going. Don't give in to these false prophets. Whoever perseveres to the end will be saved. When that sign occurs, when all aspects of the church are despised by the world, that is Jesus' advice to all Christians. Why should that be the case? The Christians are social misfits, so there would be hatred. This world does not belong to us. Our citizenship is in the heavenly realms. We are unique, and it is because of our uniqueness that hate can arise. Since Jesus was so different from everyone else, he drew hate against himself. John 15:19. If you were of the world, it would love you as its own. Instead, the world hates you, because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. It's not fun to be despised. That takes us to the third sign of the end times, which is Jerusalem's distress. Geographically, it will be very limited. In this passage, Jesus quotes Daniel's prophecies, and there is a character in Daniel's prophecies who is referred to as the abomination of desolation. Then Jesus says that the fourth sign of his coming will come immediately after that. So we shall know when he is coming. We shall be ready. When that sign comes, there will be no danger of false prophets or false messiahs. There will be no deception. It will be too quick. What will happen is that all natural light will be switched off. The sun will go dark. The stars will fall. There are many predictions of this all the way through the Bible. Isaiah predicts it. The heavens will be rolled up like a carpet. All the stars of heaven will be dissolved. The skies will be rolled up like a scroll, and all their stars will fall like withered leaves from the vine, like foliage from the fig tree. What is happening? What is going on? People may ask. This is it, Christians will exclaim. The sun, stars, and moon stop shining right before that happens. God turns off the lights of heaven to prepare for the blaze of light from the lightning that will mark his return. Then he comes on the clouds back to planet Earth, and we meet him. We are not meeting in an earthly stadium because there isn't one large enough to accommodate such a large crowd. We'll reach him in the air, and that'll suffice. Isn't that a fantastic prospect? When you see all these things, you know he is at the gates, just about to walk through, he says. When the Son of Man returns, it will be like it was in Noah's day. In those days before the flood, the people were enjoying banquets and parties and weddings right up to the time Noah entered his boat. People didn't realize what was going to happen until the flood came and swept them all away. That is the way it will be when the Son of Man comes. 2 men will be working together in the field. One will be taken, the other left. 2 women will be grinding flour at the mill. One will be taken, the other left. So you, too, must keep watch, for you don't know what day your Lord is coming. Understand this. If a homeowner knew exactly when a burglar was coming, he would keep watch and not permit his house to be broken into. You also must be ready all the time, for the Son of Man will come when least expected. A faithful, sensible servant is one to whom the master can give the responsibility of managing his other household servants and feeding them. If the master returns and finds that the servant has done a good job, there will be a reward. I tell you the truth, the master will put that servant in charge of all he owns. But what if the servant is evil and thinks, "My master won't be back for a while," and he begins beating the other servants, partying, and getting drunk? The master will return unannounced and unexpected, and he will cut the servant to pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Matthew 24:37-51. In the remainder of this sermon, Jesus goes on to 3 parables, which are the wise virgins whose lamps were still burning when the bridegroom came, the foolish bridesmaids whose lamps had gone out, and the parable of the wise and foolish virgins. They had gone away to try to get some oil, but they had missed the bridegroom's arrival and thus were unable to attend the wedding. Then he moved on to the parable of the talents, in which some people received 10 talents, others 5, and then someone received none. The master left and returned, asking, "Now, what have you done with the talents I've left with you?" "I've got another 10, the man with 10 said. "I've got another 5, the man with 5 said. "I haven't done anything about it," said the man who had 1. "I buried it, because I know you're a hard man, who reaps where he hasn't sown and wants payment from me." What a horrible thing to say. We look at what Jesus said and what the master said to him after that. The final passage is not a parable, but rather a straight prediction, involving an analogy of sheep and goats. He finished that parable with dividing nations, everybody, and telling them why he divided them. Because those who are on his left hand are those who ignored Christ in Christians. Insofar as they didn't help the least of these, his brothers, they were doing it not to him. But to the people on his right, he said, "You saw Christ in my brethren. And inasmuch as you did it to the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me." He is not dividing people into those who did philanthropy and those who didn't. The key is the meaning of the word brethren. When Christ said brethren, he always meant his own followers. "Go and tell my brethren that I have risen from the dead." In the teaching of Jesus, brethren is a key word. It means those who follow me. He is simply saying, whatever you have done to Christians, or not done for them, was done to me or not for me. Their attitude toward Christ is revealed by their attitude to Christians, and that is the principle on which they are divided. Now, let us consider all that we have seen in the passage. First, there is a warning that nobody has God's diary, that not even Jesus knew the date of his return. Angels didn't know it, and no man knew it. We should have a healthy ignorance of the date of his return. Nearer the time, as we watch for the signs, we will know. Mark 13:32. No one knows about that day or hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Did you notice that one word appeared in all three parables? The parable of the home, the parable of the virgins, and the parable of the talents? The householder was a long time returning, the bridegroom was a long time coming, and the person who gave the talents was gone for a long time. He is looking for your faithfulness when he was away a long time. That is what he wants. He will say, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your Lord." There will be this separation in his coming between the faithful, who have continued to do what he has left them to do, those who have every day remembered that he is coming back, and who have kept to the job and endured the suffering and been his good and faithful servants, and those who, because he has not come soon, have fallen into bad ways. Their lamp has gone out, and they no longer shine for Jesus, and they have buried their talents. Objectives of the End-Time Church. In the book of Proverbs, we are warned that where there is no vision, the people cast off restraint. Proverbs 29:18. NIV or perish, KJV. There are two main objectives of the End-Time Church. God has in view as he brings about the restoration of the church. Let's look first at God's purpose to restore unity to the church, or bring the church into unity. The church has a task to complete before Jesus can come back. Matthew 24:14 reads, "And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come." All four Gospels conclude with this commission to the apostles, and through them to the Church Universal. Disciples are to be made from every nation. It is God's desire and intention to have within his family humans from every tribe and language and people and nation. Revelation 5:9-7-9. Revelation 5:9. And they sang a new song, saying, "You are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, because you were slain, and with your blood you purchased for God persons from every tribe and language and people and nation." Revelation 7:9. After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. They were wearing white robes and were holding palm branches in their hands. Only through our obedience to the commission of Jesus can the world ever be brought face to face with the fact that there is a King of kings and a Lord of lords whose name is Jesus, and all authority is given to him. We are accountable for demonstrating this to the world. As we obey Jesus' order and carry his message, he will validate it with the spiritual signs he promised and testify to his own authority in the word he has committed to us. There is one other reason why he says, "All authority is given to me. Go, therefore." As a result, go, therefore. There are several areas where traveling is extremely difficult. There are governments on the planet that oppose or refuse to preach the gospel. Today, there are many locked doors, but Jesus responds, "If you will go and follow me, remember that I have the authority. If you speak to me about it, I'll open those closed doors for you. I'll find a path where there isn't one. I will make it possible for you to follow me, if you are willing to do so. The church's safety and progress are dependent on bold, optimistic outreach. That means not being afraid, not focusing solely on survival, and not hiding in a cave with some hoarded groceries. Bold, constructive outreach in obedience to the Lord is the path to safety and success. When we view the harvest from God's standpoint, we see that the initiative in world affairs is with the church. Seldom do God's people seem to realize that. The initiative is not about politicians, scientists, or military commanders, but about the people of God, the church. God will never allow the initiative to pass into other hands, while the church is here as the representative of His Son, Jesus Christ. Taja's second task is the unity in the church. We must have the right relationship with the ministries, the authorities that Jesus establishes in His church. This will set us in the right relationship with our fellow believers. We will then speak the truth in love. And as we speak the truth in love, under discipline and authority, we will cease to be spiritually dull infants.